So I got some cuts. It could be the key. This is the key to the door, no problem. Now let's see if it turns the ignition. If it doesn't turn the ignition, more than likely the second one. Because remember, so there was a second code. The second code, number 2, is gonna be a modified version of this, which is more likely going to turn the ignition. Since the first one turned the ignition already, let's check and see. All right, so this is what I cut. It turned the door, but not the ignition. I am thinking this could turn the ignition. So I use F438 reader instead of picking the door lock. I use the reader, and with the reader I get 2 keys. I'm gonna start cutting them and trying them in the door lock. If that turns, then we might be able to not deal with the alarm. I'm not worried about that, but I just want to do it a different way today. So let's try this. Let's get some test keys, H75 or H70. And how about the ignition? Still not turning the ignition. So I'm going to ask the customer if he was using the same key for the door and the ignition, or if he was using a door pad, remote. The only code that we got left is this one, so we're going to cut this. And notice how it still starts with the same combination from 1 through 8, which is the cut that I read in the door. But these 2 did not turn the ignition. However, they did turn the door, so it means that we are on the path unless the ignition was replaced. And so this is a totally different combination from these. In the tip area, end up with the 4-3. So let's go ahead and cut this and find out. I use F438 reader, and let's try my cut. So a very crazy story for me today on this Ford. It's a 2009 Ford F150. Door were locked. So instead of picking the door, I just went ahead and Instead of picking the door, I just went ahead and read the wafers with the F438 Lishi reader. My first combination of 2 keys allowed me to turn the door, but wouldn't turn the ignition. So I went ahead and did for some modification. I edited the code in a way I thought was more accurate, but I was never able to turn the ignition. Then comes the time when I reach out to my key code service. Man, I got 10 keys, 10 test keys to this vehicle, plus 1 chip key, because I didn't want to have to buy a code. Guess what? after cutting all these keys, I told myself, okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and buy the code. And while buying the code, okay, so this is our, this car doesn't have any power. That's crazy. So this truck is on now. I'm sorry I wasn't able to tell you what I was doing on the programming side. So while cutting the code, I decided to use all my test keys in the ignition again to make sure that I didn't make a mistake. Guess what? One of the test keys that I tried in the ignition was actually the right one. For some reason, I tried it. I wiggled all the test keys to make sure, well, this doesn't have a steering lock anyway, but it did not turn. After I paid for the code and it was processing, I found the test keys that was turning the ignition, tried to cancel, but it was already gone. You know, they had already charged and sent the code over there. So basically I paid for something that I already had, and basically maybe I didn't have to cut that many test keys. Maybe it was within my first 2 keys. But that's crazy. Well, it is what it is. So the keys programmed now to the vehicle. This is a pretty easy process, normally a 10-minute. I like this programmer because a lot of times this programmer will take a shorter amount of time to program. So let me see if I can do this. Oh man, that's crazy. 71597. Okay. This is a failure story on the 2009 Ford F-150. It was an all keys lost. It started beautifully well. I use a F438 instead of picking and decoding the door lock. I did not want the car to go off. Even if I know by using this I could have read the door pad code and disabled the alarm, I just wanted to do it a different way. So I used this Lishi, which is a F438 reader. You don't have to pick and decode, you just have to read the wafer on each side. On this vehicle there is 8 space, including 6 space in the door with depth 1 through 5. So I went ahead and used this. Within 2 minutes I got a combination of 6 out of 8 space, put that in my cutter, and got 2 keys that were matching my combination. First key wasn't the right one, second key was the right one, but for some reason I still don't understand what happened. It turned the door lock. I used it in ignition, or maybe I forgot. It did not turn the ignition, or maybe I was supposed to put a little more force, but I was expecting it to be really smooth. It did not turn, so I went ahead and started modifying the code that I got, which was the right code, ending up in cutting more keys. All my test keys here were cut from other codes, when my first code that I got within 5 minutes, using this, and which was this key, was already working. I spent 2 hours cutting keys when the job was done within 15 minutes. And the worst is, at last, if you see that I cut this, you would say, why would you cut the cheap key? Because I was comparing the price of this to the price of the code. So I had this key and another cheap key that I couldn't afford to lose, but I could afford to lose this because the code is way more expensive than this. I went ahead and cut this. So all these were failures, right? Within 5 minutes, this was the right key. And I did not, for some reason, I did not pay attention, but I tried it in ignition. So I cut 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and spent 2 hours on this car when the job could have been done in 15 minutes. Programming usually takes 10 minutes, but the programmer I used is pretty quick on Fords and does it almost instantly. But this is a crazy story. Crazy story. In my hands. And I'm gonna try again the door. The ignition. Crazy, wasting my money here like this. Time and money. Let me text him to let him know that